Hello Wolfpack, back here on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is still holding the 28.6k support zone. If we delete this entire chart and delete all the indicators we're looking at, we can see that that 28.6k support zone is in fact the support zone of the critical support zone, I should say, that we need to be holding in order to be maintaining this macro structure. I'll just draw it in there at 28.7, and you can see that throughout the entire duration of basically the entire duration of 2021 and also until the current date, which we're in May 2022, this thing has held for support at 28.6k, 28.7k, and we're testing it once again. And obviously, on the last two times we've tested this, we've bounced, and on this time, it's a big question mark what's going to happen. And we think, obviously, as the Wolfpack, or I personally think, regardless of whether you consider yourself aligned with my views or not, that we will drop below that eventually. However, the shorter term scenario is undecided at this point. I'm not sure what's going to happen in the short term. I made that abundantly clear over the last week or so. And I do think that this consolidation at this period will be coming to an end relatively shortly, possibly within the next week or so, maybe a little bit more than a week. And I think that, it is a bit of a boring state in the market, and this is why I have been encouraging people to take an opportunity and take the chance, this chance of a little bit of break the market's given us to expand your knowledge on fundamentals and expand your knowledge on TA rather than just sitting here waiting for something to happen, right? And this is why I've been diverting a lot of my attention in the last week or so to altcoin trading. Posted many trading signals in the V.I.P group there for YouTube and many profitable signals. However, I'm not going to talk about that too much until the end of the video. But what we can talk about now is the fact that this consolidation period within the next week or so, maybe a little bit more, will be coming to an end. And the reason we can assume that is because of the Bollinger Bands coming in for a tight compression. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that we need to make a decisive move to the upside or downside, but it does mean that we're going to stop shopping in this small, tiny price region between 31k and 28k, which is obviously a very small price region, only about 15% price range, and we will be seeing either a dead cat bounce to the upside or a drop to the downside very shortly. What view do I favor there? What is my favored view? I would say at this point, my favorite view for the short term is a bounce. However, I don't really care, because I think that at this point, the macro structure is so bad that regardless of whether we bounce or not, it doesn't really matter. And if we jump to something like the 4-hourly chart, we can really see that, everyone's in the same position. And I know that's irrational to say based off a chart, but what you can actually observe and what you can do is try and turn this into a narrative. We've come down, we've broken below all of the structures. The last point where people were openly bullish would have been over here in this massive bear flag formation. Now we've broken below that, and we've come all the way down here to the doorstep of 30k. And obviously there are people who are still bullish, but for the most part, even the people who are bullish are reserved, right? They're reserved because they don't necessarily want to jump into Bitcoin after seeing it drop like from 39k to 30k in literally just over a week. And so they're sitting on the fence and they're waiting for something to happen. And even the people who are bullish right now are openly saying, oh, this is bullish, bullish consolidation, etc. will probably be waiting until prices like 33k or higher or 36k before they buy. Because even the people who are bullish macro, which by the way, why would you be bullish macro? But people who are bullish macro are actually on the fence right now. Right? They're waiting for some confirmation because they don't want to just jump into a trade, like they did like multiple times on each single dead cat bounce up here for it to go and drop down towards 24k. And so the entire market, and including the bears as well, right? People don't want to sell before we drop below 28k. They'd rather sell once we've dropped below 28k. The entire market right now is just kind of sitting on their hands and just waiting to see what's going to happen. And everyone's watching the chart, but no one's really interacting with the chart. And we do see that, with the current price action in 15% range, but we do also see that there's a lot of, indecisiveness regarding the volume. So there's actually relatively high volume right now, comparatively to what we saw throughout, January to April. There's higher volume than January to April on average, so which means a lot of coins are being traded, a lot of Bitcoins are being traded, but there's no clear winner of those trades, right? There's no bullish, control, or there's no bearish control. It's kind of just neutral, and that's why we're going sideways. But what I will say is, generally speaking, when you go sideways on top of support after a big drop, you want to be seeing, or you generally do see, a little bit of a dead cat bounce before a continuation of a downside. And so if I was using that very preliminary logical side of my brain and addressing the TA based off of it, I would say that the most likely short-term move is an upwards break. Not a break, but upwards dead cat bounce, possibly as high as like 36k, something like that. before a drop downwards. However, I don't really care, and so I'm not going to make any predictions on that. Honestly, we could just drop. Who knows? And so, now that we've established the short term is kind of just a bit unreliable to look at right now, but we have also established the fact that, well, there probably will be something happening within the next week or so. We can move on to something like the longer term, which a lot of people are very familiar with. Now, there's not too much to talk about Bitcoin right now, but there is traditional markets to talk about, which have had some interesting progress that we need to discuss. But what I do want to talk about on Bitcoin is just the usual spiel. We have the 4-year cycle theory here, which is a theory based on the Bitcoin halving, right? It basically assumes that every 4 years there will be a bull market, and within that 4-year period, there will be 1 year of intense bear market and 2 years of accumulation. Okay, so some people like to say 3 years bear market, 1 year bull market. I like to say it another way, but the point is every 4 years we see a bull market, and the rest of the time is generally accumulation or down. And we've seen that play out on 3 separate occasions now. And so it is in fact a trend, because obviously you need 3 data points to make a trend. We have some date ranges, 1,400 days comes up multiple times. And we can see that due to these date ranges and due to the color codes, you can read it for yourself here. You can see that November this year is the most likely bottom for Bitcoin. Now, that doesn't mean Bitcoin needs to bottom in November. It means November is the most likely bottom for Bitcoin. And where do we generally bottom on Bitcoin? Well, we generally bottom on the 200-week SMA, which is this green line here. And if we remove everything from this chart, right, what we can actually see is that every time we lose the 50-week, which is the red line, we end up at the green line. We've seen that here. We've seen that here. And we've seen that during the COVID drop. And guess what? We've lost the 50-week right now. We've lost it over here, actually, and we're going downwards towards the green line. And if people don't believe that, all you need to do is flip over the chart to remove your bias, right? And you can flip this chart. So this is the same chart. It's just inverted. And you can see that on this occurrence, it's just the same chart as I said, but just inverted. Every time we break above the red line, we end up at the green line and we reject off of it, right? Break above the red line, end up at the green, reject off of it. Break above the red line, end up at the green, reject off of it. Break above the red line, end up at the green, and probably reject off of it. And if we flip that chart around, it looks like that. So we go upwards, break down, upwards, break down. Very basic stuff. That's just a cheeky little way to remove your bias on the market by just flipping the chart upside down. Because a lot of people who have a bias, and most people have bias, by the way, that they want the market to go up. Obviously, they're gonna do their best subconsciously just to not see the reality of a situation. Flipping it upside down really breaks that. And so, right now I would say that the most likely scenario for Bitcoin is going downwards towards the 200-week SMA. And the most likely scenario also is that we bottom at the 200-week SMA. However, there is a chance, as per the traditional markets, that we do break down below that we'll discuss later in the video. So that's at 22K at this point. Moving forward, we have the monthly chart. The monthly candle closes in 7 days. And so it's pretty critical to start talking about this now. But basically what happens with the 21 EMA on the monthly chart, which is this pink line I've brought up here, 21 EMA, you can see that every time we break below this, we see a massive correction. Every time we get above it, we see a massive pump, right? It is a line in which whenever we interact with it, there is a massive reaction in the market. We've broken below this line and we've already seen a massive reaction. But if we get above 37K, which is where the 21 EMA is, within 7 days by the monthly candle close, we will, in a sense, be invalidating this drop, and we could start a fresh move to the upside. So we have 7 days on Bitcoin to get above 37K in order to partially invalidate this move. Do I think it's going to happen? Not at all, but I think it's worth talking about. And we can also see, before we get rid of the monthly chart here, that the RSI, for example, right, and let me move my face cam out of the way so you guys can see this a bit better. The RSI, and I'll move this yellow line out of the way. Basically, on the monthly chart, the RSI is a good predictor of the macro bottom as well as the 200-week SMA. What we can see is that 44 on the RSI has been the macro bottom on 2 separate occasions in both 2014 and in 2018, or 2015 and 2019, I should say. And we are getting extremely close to 44 on the RSI right now, and that would line up with a touch of a 200-week SMA, which is another piece of evidence to assume that the 200-week SMA will most likely be the bottom of Bitcoin. However, I will say that we're getting oddly close, right? And if we are going to bottom out at 44 on the RSI, what we need to be seeing actually is a dead cat bounce in this price region, and it might be a piece of evidence to support the fact that we'll see a dead cat bounce before we drop below 28.6K. So if we see a dead cat bounce, it will look something like this, and then we can reset and bottom out at 22K on Bitcoin while hitting 44 on the RSI. I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense to me. Now, before we get into the rest of the video, I want to talk about the BitGet Exchange. I personally use this a lot, Binance being my major exchange, and then BitGet being my sub-exchange where I trade futures on quite regularly. I don't use leverage personally, but you can trade futures with 0x or 1x leverage, which is the same thing as just trading spot to the downside. And obviously during a bear market, you want to be trading with the trend, and so the trend is downwards, and so, you know, wherever you can, or wherever it's logical to, you could be putting yourself in position to trade 1x leverage short to the downside, which would be trading with the trend. And so that's why I'm using BitGet quite a lot during the bear market here. And so if you want to gain access to BitGet, it has the lowest fees in the game, lower than that of Binance. In fact, it has half the fees of Binance. And as you guys know, Binance is commonly known as the lowest fee exchange. This is lower than that, and also no KYC, so it doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter where your location is, you can use this exchange. You can check out BitGet using my referral link in the description below and get access to over $4,000 in rewards after completing a few tasks. But I do want to talk about the DXY a bit as well, and this is kind of the major part of this video that's unique. Now, a lot of the video I've talked about, a lot of the part of the video that I've talked about before here is quite basic stuff, right? All I've really said is Bitcoin's going sideways, it's going to make a move within a week or so, and the longer term picture is exactly the same. The longer term picture is bearish, and so we need to talk about some fresh information. And the fresh information we need to talk about in this video is the traditional markets. Now, there has been a massive correction in the DXY over the last few days. In fact, it's come all the way downwards from 105 all the way down to 101, which is a 3% drop, which is quite considerable for something like the DXY. Now, the DXY is a chart that measures the strength of the US dollar against other global currencies. When this thing goes up, Bitcoin goes down. When this thing goes down, Bitcoin goes up, right? And we've seen that over and over again throughout history. For example, throughout the 2017 bull market, this thing went down while Bitcoin, skyrocketed. As soon as Bitcoin topped out, this thing went an upwards trend during the Bitcoin bear market. And then as soon as the new bull market started in 2020 and 2021, this thing tanked while Bitcoin pumped, right? And now the opposite is happening in the bear market. So this trend, whatever the way this thing's going, the DXY very much is in accordance or very much hand in hand with how Bitcoin moves to the reverse. And so this thing skyrocketing means that Bitcoin's going to show a lot of weakness. And it makes sense because the DXY gets stronger as more people flock into cash. And if more people are selling assets, more people are hence flocking into cash from their assets, right? They're selling their assets, their stocks, for their crypto for cash. And so right now we're seeing a bit of a correction on the DXY, which is obviously very good for Bitcoin. However, and this is the interesting thing, however, we haven't seen a reaction from Bitcoin yet. Usually when we see a correction from a DXY, we see Bitcoin make a swing to the upside. We haven't seen that yet. And so Bitcoin, in a sense, is almost decoupling from this chart a little bit. And the correction in stock market has continued, while the correction in Bitcoin chart has not continued. And it's kind of hard to understand whether that trend is going to continue. It's only been like 7 days, but it is interesting to note that there is a bit of decoupling going on here in the shorter term price action. What I also do want to say is that the DXY is long-term macro bullish. So essentially, we're heading into recession. Interest rates need to go up a lot more, as seen by the bond yields predicting 2.5% rates within the end of the year, which should easily happen. Easily happen. We can assume that the DXY will go up because of that. Because what happens when interest rates go up? Well, people flock, again, from assets and crypto and whatever it may be, into cash. And so regardless of what the TA suggests, the TA obviously being a rounded top formation, saying will go down, the TA doesn't really matter here. This is a macro-driven chart. The macro is bearish, and so the DXY will go up, which will lead stocks and Bitcoin to go downwards. But this is what's interesting right now that I wanted to bring up. The fact that this thing's correcting, Bitcoin's not going up like it should. Now, this could be an indication that perhaps the market is exhausted from the recent drop, which would make sense. It could also be an indication that a small dead cat bounce is on the way, which would make sense. Again, according to the Bitcoin TA and according to the macro, that kind of does seem to be the logical kind of solution for the next few weeks here. And so that's the conclusion that I'm going to go with here. I would say that in the short term, it is more likely than not that Bitcoin sees a dead cat bounce to that 36k region, and that's what I'm going to be looking at. Either 36k or maybe at the very bare minimum 33k. It just seems like to me there needs to be something here. Now, again, I'm not entirely confident, but I that's what it's suggesting at this point. Macro, still bearish, short term, leaning slightly bullish here for Bitcoin. Now, this is a very interesting question that I get a lot, not really a question, but more of a statement. And just to summarize what he's saying here, a lot of people are saying that because we didn't see a dead cat bounce in the 2021 bull market, it is not logical to assume that we will see a conventional bottom on Bitcoin, right? So people think we didn't see a blow off, not a dead cat bounce, a blow off top, and so why would we see a bottom of a 12-week SMA on Bitcoin? Because if something that hasn't typically happened during a bull market, which is the blow off top, why would the bear market be conventional as well? To that, I would say there are multiple answers that I can give you, one of which being, before I even get into the logical answer, one of which being, what is a blow off top, right? It's subjective. Much like Elliott wave theory, it's very, very subjective. The blow off top in 2013, occurred throughout months and months and months, and essentially went up over, 17x. The blow off top in 2018, there's no real distinguishable point for where it occurred, but I'm going to say that it occurred over here, and we went up only 500x, 500%. And then the blow off top here in 2021, a lot of people would say, well, where is it? It's not there. Well, you could say it was from September to November, in which case it went up about 80%. So what you'll notice is that 17x to 500x to 80%, there's no real consistent trend of what a blow off top is here, What is a blow off top? It's very subjective. It could just mean a period in which the price goes up rapidly, and in which case we had that. From September to November, we went up 80%. You're just because it didn't go up the same percent as before, it doesn't mean it's not a blow off top. That's called diminishing returns, and that's exactly what we saw between 2013 and 2018, from 17x to 500%. That's diminishing returns. And so I would argue that we just saw the same thing in 2021. I'd also argue that a blow off top isn't actually a fundamental part of the cryptocurrency cycle. What's fundamental is the halving, a bear market, and a bull market. Blow off top is an imaginary word we just made up for no reason to fit the bullish bias, right? I would also say that even under the assumption that a blow off top is a real thing, right? And even under the assumption that we didn't see a blow off top, we are still not seeing a conventional bear market, in the sense that we're not going down as much as we went down before. So what people would argue is that, hey, Wolf, we didn't see a blow off top, right? We didn't go up as much as we should have, and so you can't expect us to go down as much as we should have. But what they don't understand is that I'm not saying we're going to go down more or the same as what we previously did, right? I'm actually saying, by saying we're going to 200-week SMA, I'm saying we're going down less, because in 2013, to the 200-week SMA from the top was 86%. In 2018, it was 83%. This time it's only 68%. So even assuming that a blow off top is a real thing that didn't happen, and agreeing with you entirely, I'm still saying that this will be less of a drop than the previous bull markets, and hence you've kind of answered your own question. You've kind of answered your own point, in saying that, hey, it wasn't a conventional bull market, I don't think it's going to be a conventional bear market. Well, guess what? By my prediction, it's not a conventional bear market. We're only going down 68%, when before we went down 86% and 83%. So, that's not really a valid point, and I'm glad to put that to rest right now. But before we end the video here, I do want to make some conclusions. I understand this is a bit of a rough video today. There has been a bit of a struggle recently as to stuff to talk about, of course, because Bitcoin's literally doing nothing right now. But just to summarize the main points, Bitcoin is going to be making a move for the next week or so. That move is most likely going to be a move upwards, a dead cat bounce, but who knows, to be honest. And the macro structure is still very bearish. Where can we go on that dead cat bounce? Possibly 33k, maybe even 36k, and that's all we can say about the matter. I do want to, before I end the video as well, say that in this time of uncertainty on Bitcoin, and in this time in which no one really knows what's going on in the short term, including myself, I have launched Wolves of Crypto VIP. You can go ahead and click the join button at the bottom of this video. You get access to a 2-hour video on market psychology, a trading signal on altcoins every second day, and as of recent, a weekly newsletter where I release, a PDF document to the VIP members that outlines everything that happened during the week and everything we're expecting for next week. For those of you who don't have time to watch a 20-minute video every day, that's a good little few pages of analysis per day. So that's 3 separate things you're getting there, as well as stickers and emojis and priority reply to comments for $28 a month, an absolute bargain. Go ahead and join using that join button below. That is insanely good value. A newsletter, trading signals, and a 2-hour video on market psychology, and priority reply to comments, where I reply to your comments over people who are normal members, right? Crazy, crazy good value there. Go ahead and join that up. And then also, if you want to learn how to trade, you want to take this bear market, this boring market, to be honest, and turn it into something productive, you can go to cryptoacademy.courses, a website myself and Mega Whale have created to teach people how to trade through a 10-unit course called Become a Trader. That's the Crypto Academy. Go ahead in the pinned comment below and click on the website link and you can learn more about that. Without further ado, I'll end the video there. Thanks for watching, guys. Sorry for the vague video. Not too much to say and not too much analysis to do because we're just going sideways. But it's good to keep you guys updated regardless. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.